Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start off. Yeah, exactly. That's Halloween bar music. So
It's a monster mash.
Exactly. So I'll start with current news updates as we're trying to do that. So this past week, and it's now a little later than when I wrote this, but this past week, the shooter of the Denver gay nightclub Club Q in 2022 has pled guilty to killing 5 people and injuring 17, and they were sentenced to life in prison. The shooter's mother came out and said that her child was, in the past threatening to harm her with homemade bombs, ammunition, and weapons. The shooter, they pled no contest to bias-motivated crimes, specifically. And the shooter
is that, the same as a hate crime?
I think so. I think it's just, the legal, I don't know. The shooter is non-binary, which is why I'm using they, them pronouns. Obviously, does feel, a little weird, that, there was, a gay hate crime, and yet, we're respectful of this person's pronouns. I don't know. Obviously, I feel like there has to be more to that, because usually it's straight people that commit these crimes, They received 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility for parole on the murder charges, and they will also receive 46 consecutive 48-year sentences for the attempted murder counts, which I think is quite fair. Mm-hmm. A woman in El Paso shot her Uber driver, Daniel Piedra Garcia, in the head multiple times. She claims that she believed he was kidnapping her into Mexico. She says this because she saw signs on the highway heading toward Juarez, Mexico, which is how highways work.
Yeah, I told you this. It makes me wonder, one, she clearly had to have some sort of paranoia already.
Right.
And but have you ever been on an interstate? And
yeah.
I told you, our parents live near Nashville now. My husband is from Nashville, so we go there a lot. And when we're driving to Nashville, I never think oh my God, he's taking me to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Because the interstate signs say this way to Kentucky. Nashville and Kentucky just happen to be in the same direction.
Yeah. And so she's now being charged with murder, obviously. Mm-hmm. But there is the question, right? Is she suffering from a mental illness? Is she having paranoia? Mm-hmm. Was this race related and a hate crime? Or is it possible that she's just a murderer and just was an opportunity to kill someone? But I will say it's a very dangerous way to kill someone else. You are in this car that is now clearly gonna crash, I would assume, unless she did it stopped. I don't know the results.
Yeah. Well, even then though, their foot would come off the brake, I would think.
Yeah.
But also, is not to give her the benefit of the doubt, but have they been able to prove that he was not taking her to Mexico?
Yeah. I mean, what they are able to prove is that he was following the correct route to the destination that she was Ubering to. So, I mean, I guess at any time he could have changed that, but by the time that she shot him, they were still on the correct...
mapping the right route.
Yes, they were still going in the direction that she would have needed to go where she was going.
Girlie, you live in Texas.
Yeah. There's gonna be signs, baby girl.
Yeah, honey.
So once again, there is a GoFundMe to help with the family with funeral expenses, so that will be in the show notes for that one.
I'd love to give an update on the GoFundMe for the case I talked about at the top of last week's episode. Yeah. They have reached far over their goal. Mm-hmm. So their goal was $200,000. They have raised, last I checked, $294,000.
Nice.
So they are going to be able to pay for those funeral expenses and then hopefully have enough money for mom and sister to take care of medical bills that mom is going to need, or to restart
live. Yeah,
honestly,
I mean, you just lost
that's awesome,
an income too.
Yeah, and there's no way you would want to go back to live in that home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
All right, so I'm going to get into this one. This case, the case of Christopher Jenkins, is one I think about all the time. I heard about this case, and it stays with me, and I think of different possibilities all the time, and so I figured we could maybe figure it out together. Probably not, but we'll get closer.
We're gonna solve this crime.
Get ready, folks. You gotta dream big. I'm manifesting this. So, in 2002, a 21-year-old college athlete at the University of Minnesota went missing on Halloween night from a Minneapolis bar. His name was Christopher Jenkins, and 4 months later, his body would be found floating in the Mississippi River nearby. It was originally ruled a suicide, but 4 years later, the case was opened as a homicide, and here we are now. So, Chris Jenkins was a business major and a lacrosse player at the U of M. He lived in a neighborhood, like the college neighborhood. It's called Dinkytown, right off of campus. Yeah, isn't that fun?
That's so cute.
We love Dinkytown. He was raised in Eden Prairie, a suburb of the Twin Cities. His parents described him as a great kid, kind and helpful, an avid swimmer, which is interesting. His dad told a story of a neighbor of theirs who had epilepsy, which caused frequent seizures for her, and because of this, she wore, like, a face guard and, like, gear to school. And so she was bullied in school, and Chris's dad says, like, he always stood up for her, and he was, like, her friend and would walk around in school with her. Chris's friends talked about...
Sweet.
Yeah, sweet boy. Chris's friends talked about how great of a goalie he was in lacrosse, and that they said that he wasn't, like, aggressive by any means, but that he was certainly not the type to be easily intimidated by people. Chris had a girlfriend named Ashley Rice at the time of his disappearance. So, on Halloween night 2002, Chris and his roommates are throwing a keg party at their house. Around 10:30, Chris, his girlfriend, and 3 friends left and went to the Lone Tree Bar in downtown Minneapolis. His girlfriend, Ashley, worked at the Lone Tree Bar, but she was not working that night. She was just there with her friends. Chris was wearing a Native American costume, which is unfortunate, but we're moving on. And Ashley was dressed as a sexy police officer. Chris's costume did not have any pockets, and so his girlfriend was holding on to his belongings, his keys, his wallet, his phone, throughout the night.
She had the female grasp where you can put something between each finger.
Probably, yeah.
That boys can't do.
She's like...
She's got hands full of stuff.
Yeah.
Boys are useless.
She's probably like, I don't have pockets either, but at least I know how to fucking carry things.
Yeah.
This was... Just to note, this was the coldest day and night of October. It was about 24 degrees of that year, not ever October.
In history.
24 degrees.
In any location, at any time ever.
Yeah. There are a few witness accounts of what happened in the bar that night. So, by most accounts, so I feel confident about this, there was an altercation between 2 young men where one tried to hit on the girlfriend of the other. Chris stepped in and broke up this argument. I think, like, just like, hey, buds, like, stop. I don't know if he knew them, but it wasn't like he got into the fight. He just was like, stop that.
Well, we've already established he's anti-bullying.
Yes.
Not anti-making fun of cultures, but anti-bullying.
Yeah. At this time, for whatever reason, by whatever means, his beer spilled in his lap. This is where we're not super sure of the story, but there are some accounts, most accounts actually, say that he was kicked out of the bar because bouncers thought he was so drunk that he had peed himself. However, in the investigation Discovery show Breaking Homicide, one bouncer named Tony, who worked, or says he worked that night, says that they did not throw him out of the bar, but that he seemed agitated and walked out on his own. He walks down Hennepin Avenue in the direction of the Hennepin Bridge. That's Tony's report. I will say, we'll get into later whether or not we really believe the bouncers from the Lone Tree Bar. I just don't know. I mean, like, most people say he was kicked out, but, you know, an angry person leaving because someone told them to versus because they want to might look pretty similar. Yeah. It is also reported that Ashley had a friend in the bar that night, Mike Casey. Casey was an off-duty police officer, but he was working security next door at the Hennepin Center of the Arts.
Mm-hmm. But obviously not very well.
Yeah, so he was beat-bopping back and forth between his security and the bar.
A bar?
Yeah, and which also does make you think, like, what is going on at the Hennepin Center of the Arts at 11 o'clock on Halloween? Like, probably while whatever performance is going on, he can go to the bar and then go back. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. So, for Ashley's sexy cop costume, she had borrowed the top of Mike's police officer uniform.
Bad.
Yeah. Seems not great. It is suspected by some that Mike could have been the reason that Chris was thrown out of the bar that night, thinking maybe once the beer was spilled, Mike told the bouncers Chris peed himself, which I do believe, like, he would have known those bouncers. Like, they all work security right next door to each other. He's an off-duty cop. Like, he would have had their respect, I think.
Yeah. I also feel like if I saw someone with a spill on them in a bar, regardless of where the spill was, I don't think my first thought would be, oh, they've pissed themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, I think I would think
they spilled.
Yeah. Someone spilled on them. Mm-hmm. Like, people get spilled on literally all the time in bars.
Yeah.
When I was at the beach a few weeks ago, somebody hit me with a volleyball and spilled my drink all over my lap. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody looked at me. I went and asked the bartender. She gave me another one for free. There was not a second where she was like, "Did you piss yourself?"
Yeah. I think the lap would be the most obvious place for a drink to spill. Like, if you're sitting especially. Yeah. So, yeah. But I also think, I guess if you're super drunk, you, like, don't care. But, like, I just feel like if I pissed in my pants, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, oh, shit, like, goodbye. Yeah. Or, like, you would smell it. If I spill on
myself, I might be leaving because I don't like being sticky.
Yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't want to smell like piss.
Yeah. But anyway, so people think that Mike may have been interested in Ashley. This theory is made a little more believable by the fact that Mike Casey would end up driving Ashley home Halloween night. Mm-hmm. Some believe it could be a mixture of the stories. Maybe Chris found out something about Ashley and Mike and got upset, so he stormed out of the bar. In this case, he wasn't technically kicked out, but he did leave due to someone else. I think that the idea of Mike being involved in getting him kicked out is very plausible, given that
especially if he wanted his girl.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think it could have been a little bit of both. Like, maybe they get in an altercation, and he's like, oh, I'm just going to tell him you fucking peed your pants. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we do know that, like, Mike did, I think, do security at the Lone Tree Bar sometimes, because I think, like, you just get the security jobs wherever. So, like, he would have known those bouncers. He would have kind of had a little bit of authority there, even if he wasn't working that night. So I do think that makes sense. So Chris would have left, by whatever way he would have left the Lone Tree Bar with no ride home, no jacket in the 24-degree weather, no cell phone, no wallet, and no keys. The next morning, Ashley, his girlfriend, came to his house to return his belongings, and she did not find him there. So
obviously.
Yeah. So she calls his parents shortly after they reported him missing, but it was 5 days before the police would begin to investigate Chris's disappearance. At first, which I think is, like, unfortunately common for adults.
Yeah.
At first, they told the Jenkins family that he probably just left on a spontaneous trip. To which I say, with no keys, money, phone, or jacket.
Who does that?
Yeah. By what mechanism did he do that?
Is that one guy's Bachelor bio?
Yeah.
He said, I went on a spontaneous trip to Europe.
He probably took his phone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel good about that.
Yeah.
So 4 months.
That's a very strong assumption.
Yeah.
Though. Like,
you don't know this kid.
That's a very specific thing. Like, you could maybe say, like, maybe he just walked away.
Yeah.
Took a breather. Doesn't want to be found right now.
Yeah.
Taking a break. But, like, he took a spontaneous trip. I'm certain. That's a stretch.
At 11
and that's very
o'clock,
specific.
11 o'clock drunk, he leaves a bar.
In his Native American costume.
Gets on a bus because he doesn't have keys or a car. So he gets on
a bus pass either.
Public transit, hoping that no one stops him and asks him to pay because he has no wallet. He makes it somewhere with no money, no phone, and he's there for 5 days, and we're supposed to believe like he's still doing well.
Yeah, even if he
got on the bus,
trip,
he's not doing well. Yeah. 4 months later, on February 27th of 2003, Christopher's body was found in the Mississippi River between the Hennepin Avenue Bridge and the 3rd Street Bridge. So, still in the area.
I think that's wrong.
Yeah, you're going to think a lot of stuff is wrong. The police originally ruled his death a suicide or an accident, kind of assuming that he had jumped from the bridge or fallen from the bridge, possibly fallen from a bank. They think, because, like, if you're drunk, you must have been peeing on the side of the river and just slipped.
Because he didn't pee enough on himself in the bar.
Mm-hmm. 4 years later, on November 17th, 2006, new chief of police, Tim Dolan, changed this to a homicide, opened it as a criminal investigation, and issued an apology to the Jenkins family. We're going to review some of the evidence that may have led them to change their interpretation of Chris's death, because they don't just do that for funsies. Yeah. They don't like admitting when they're wrong.
No.
So you will get to decide what you think happened, although I'll go ahead and offer a spoiler that I absolutely believe there's foul play involved here. Mm-hmm. I am going to start with reviewing the circumstantial evidence of what may have happened that night. As I mentioned, there are a few eyewitness accounts of parts of the evening that we then got to put together. Most agree that Chris broke up that altercation and then spilled beer on his pants. Personally, I think he was either kicked out or left with a plan to return because he left his belongings inside. So I think if he stormed out, even if it was because he was mad at Ashley, he would have said, "Give me my phone," if he did not plan to come back. I think he could have, whatever, but I think he either kicked out and had no choice to leave his phone, or he left and was going to go take a breather, cool off, dry off his pants, whatever, and then come back. And he did not.
I think, though, even if you're being kicked out, I think that I, at least, would be like, okay, my girlfriend has my phone. Like, can you have her bring it outside to me or something?
Yeah, I mean, I will say there's not great reviews on the Lone Tree Bar bouncers. However, I think, as his girlfriend, you are watching him get kicked out. You should, either go with him, or if that's not your style, whatever, then you say, "Take your phone, please.
Right.
I can hold on to your wallet if you want," whatever. Like, make a deal, but, like, you need to give him his phone.
For a ride.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. You're gonna need to call a cab. Like, here's your phone. I just think that's weird. Or, like, a fucking jacket? Like, would you like a jacket before you go outside? So, the person who drove them there that night was also still inside the bar. So, he can't, like, go back in. He doesn't have a phone to call them and say, like, "Can you take me back?" Or, like, "When are y'all planning to go back?" And that's the other thing about, like, if he was kicked out, like, he would have no way to know when they are leaving the bar. Like, he's just going to wait outside for them the whole night? Like, I don't know.
And would the bouncers let him wait outside?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, due to the fact that the Minneapolis police were treating this death as a suicide to begin with, the Jenkins family had to take matters into their own hands, as families do. They hired
So they, like, never believed it was a suicide?
No, they didn't. I think maybe they could have been convinced of an accident once, but they wanted a private investigator to look into it. But, I mean, no. Like, no one ever believed it was a suicide. And I did leave this part out because I do not mean this cruel, but, like, a lot of people do not believe that their loved one would ever complete a suicide or attempt a suicide. But everyone did say, like, that would not have been Chris. Like, he would not have done this. Like, he had a lot to live for. And so,
I think especially not if you're drunk on Halloween.
Yeah. I mean, again, unless we are to believe that he finds out Ashley's cheating on him and it is just so detrimental that it changes the whole night. But I don't see that.
No.
So they hire private investigator Chuck Lesh. Because Chris left the bar and headed toward the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, one of the police theories is that he jumped off the bridge into the Mississippi River or fell off the bridge. So Lesh found some camera footage from that night that would have caught the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. The Federal Reserve Bank had 2 surveillance cameras pointed at the bridge. They were working that night. They would have been high-quality, expensive surveillance cameras, because this is the Federal Reserve. And neither of them caught any sign of Chris or anyone wearing a Native American costume walking along the bridge.
Yeah, because they need to be checking for footage from the day they found him, because there's no way that he stayed in the same spot in the Mississippi River for 4 months.
Yeah. So, Lesh also brought in bloodhounds to attempt to track Chris's scent from the Lone Tree Bar. I will say the dogs thing.
It's been 4 years.
No, this was like when they were still looking at it as a suicide. I don't think it was like the next day though. Like it was, it had been a little time, but it was, I think, before the body was even found. So within months. But obviously the dogs thing is flawed. People don't believe it all the time, but I think this is pretty compelling. So, multiple dogs tracked his scent across the street, less than a block away, to a pizza place called Times Square Pizza and Subs. The dogs then track his scent to an underground parking garage, which would have been essentially underneath the pizza place. They track to a specific parking stall, which investigators seem to have confirmed one of the bouncers of that area. I don't necessarily know if it was a Lone Tree bouncer or if it could have been Mike Casey, but one of the bouncers was parked in that stall that night. They will not tell us who it is. We'll get into why they might not want to tell us who it is.
Because it's a police officer named Mike Casey.
They also confirmed that the friend, just to be safe, they confirmed that the friend that drove them to the bar that night did not park in that garage. So there would have been no reason for Chris's scent to be in that garage from, like, getting there that night.
Okay.
Apparently, they later brought the dog to this bouncer's car. Like, they knew the bouncer. They let him go to the car. And he did hit on the outside of the car for Chris's scent. Which, again, could mean less, right? Like, you leaned on the car. But it's also, like, why is he leaning on their car?
Or he was thrown up against the car.
Right. True. So near those parking stalls in that garage, again, this is not like the next day, so these could have been unrelated, but it's important to note, small blood droplets, red string, and a red feather were found. There's no sign that any of this was tested, and I'm unsure how long after Halloween these things were found, but this does sound reminiscent of a Native American Halloween costume.
Yeah, it does.
So.
And a murder.
Yeah.
Blood.
Yeah. And I don't know if, like, there's, like, a time limit on, like, maybe you can't test the blood after it's been sitting in a parking garage for that long, or if they just didn't want to pay for it. But it doesn't seem like it was tested.
I feel like, once again, you're telling me an unsolved case, and, like, 5 minutes into it, I've already decided who did it.
Mm-hmm. I will say, in the original like, the Investigation Discovery episode that I watched about this, there's zero zip zilch mention of Mike Casey. So, like, that was not my theory to begin with. And then now I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, why you didn't bring him up?
Yeah, weird. There's also, like I said, I said this last week, but there's no mention of the girlfriend either. And, like, that he even had one. And I'm like, all right, y'all are leaving some shit out, dude.
Yeah.
So, some eyewitnesses did report that night seeing about 10 people outside of Times Square Pizza attacking someone. But no one can say if this was Chris or if they were wearing a Native American costume.
Why are we just glossing over a 10-on-1 attack?
They jumped someone.
Get attacked. Yeah. What the heck?
Another interesting component of this is that shortly after Christopher went missing, the owner of the Lone Tree Bar essentially issued a gag order to all employees to stick to the story that Chris walked out of the bar that night and to only speak about the case with a lawyer present.
Can bar owners issue gag orders?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when it says, like, essentially, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know if it just means, like, you will be fired. Like, just, like, a threat, or if they got some sort of, like, NDA.
Fire me from my bar job. I could never find another one of those.
Yeah, we're all, like, fucking temp bouncers that can literally just do security somewhere else, but okay. Someone who wanted to remain anonymous says that they had gone to the Lone Tree Bar a few months after Chris went missing, and he says he took a sip of his drink, he felt that it tasted weird, he got up, walked outside, and by this point he is already disoriented. He is already, like, unable to walk. Like, it was, like, immediate. He says that at this point, bouncers tried to put him into a car, but he was able to fight back and call his friend who was inside to come outside and help him.
This is like an episode of SVU.
It's freaky, man.
Like, I'm thinking of a specific episode of SVU.
Oh. So, during the months that Chris was missing, there had been hundreds of students, friends, and family who would help in the search for him. They searched all along the river and on an island called Nicollet Island. I'll mention Nicollet Island again when we get to the theories. But Nicollet Island had, like, sewer passages and caves underneath where, like, people would hang out. Like, there's, like, graffiti and empty beer cans. I will say, like, I don't know that this is super relevant, but, like, there is a cave down there called, like, Satan's Cave, and it's got, like, some satanic-looking things, but, like, probably done by kids, or, like,
the devil.
Drunk people.
No, the devil.
Like, I don't know that I think this was a ritualistic killing, but good to note that people are partying down there.
Where else are you gonna go?
I like where your head's at
already. You're gonna find another party.
Stop stealing my shit, Mary. So, obviously during these searches, nothing was found, like, on the island. However, on, like, one of the missing posters down in the downtown area, they did find a cryptic message written on the poster that just said, quote, "Loaded in trunk, paid for by Dollar Green." I don't know what the fuck that means, but...
Yeah, what's...
And I don't know if it's, like, a $sign green, because I couldn't find a picture of the poster, or if it says, like, dollar.
Yeah.
But, whatever. So, Chief Tim Dolan did tell the investigators on the Breaking Homicide episode that much of the reason that they reopened the case was that they had received somewhat of a confession that someone had picked up Chris that night. He confirms that this came from a convicted murderer who is currently in prison named Jeremy Lynn Alford. A bouncer did insinuate that Alford and his friends were at Lone Tree that night. He did seem like, when they asked, it's Derek Levasseur who does this show, and he's from Big Brother. But when Derek asked him, like, would they have been... So the guy says Alfred and his friends frequent this bar. And Derek asks, like, do you remember if he was there that night? And he was like, no one's actually asked me that. And he, like, basically, like, says yes without saying yes, which makes me think, like, he's scared of these people. Alfred was part of a group called the Dealers of Death.
Oh.
Alfred, who, at the time that he murdered the person that he's convicted for murdering, he was 22, along with his brother Lewis, who was 17. They killed their roommate, Douglas Miller, who was 32, because he was kicking them out. Like, he was, like, the landlord, too, I guess. They stabbed him 20 times with a barbecue fork and a knife, struck him with a hammer, and then set his home on fire.
Why is that 17-year-old living with 2 grown roommates?
I mean, I guess it's just because it's his brother, but, like, yeah. So, I think at the time that Chris went missing, Alfred would have been 19. Which people like to say, like, then he couldn't have been in the bar. I disagree. Like, I don't really know that if this man is a murderer, that he's above a fake ID.
Yeah.
That's
where we draw the line.
And it seems that people are scared of him. So I don't really know that the bouncers are like, yeah, I'm gonna kick this dude out.
Plus, it's been said apparently that these were not the world's greatest bouncers.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I don't know, I think we see there are bouncers for some bars that know an ID is fake and they're like, okay,
yeah,
don't use this anymore, but they let you in.
Yeah.
So,
and it's also like if he frequents it, like, all he had to do is use an ID probably like 3 times, and then now they're like, come on in.
Yeah.
You know. So next, we're going to talk about the physical evidence, which in this case is all based off of Chris's body once it's found. So in February, his body was seen by a witness walking over the 3rd Street Bridge, which she said she does every day for work. She called this in. She called this into the police, and then a few hours later, when she was watching the news, the body had already moved from where she saw it to a different position. It was caught on a tree limb, which kept it from going over a dam. Which is lucky, you know. Chris was found face up. There was no evidence of broken bones, which could have indicated a fall from the bridge. Kind of would have been necessary for that. The shirt of his Halloween costume was still tucked in, and his moccasins were still on his feet. He showed little to, like, medium levels of decomposition. These next 2 things are the most suspicious to me. Chris was found with his arms crossed over his chest, and in his hand he was clutching a wad of hair. This was tested and it came back positive as Chris's own hair.
Oh.
To me, the arms crossed, paired with the neatness of his clothing, would indicate that he was placed in the water, already dead or unconscious. The hair in his hand, his own hair in his hand, seems to indicate to me some sort of struggle where, like, if someone was touching your head or, like, hurting you, you would, like, be reaching back if they're, like, drowning you or whatever. One of the prevailing theories by police was also that he could have been peeing on the side of the river and fell in, which would be pretty weird with his shirt tucked in. I must say.
And how did he get the hair in his hands?
He's
like taking a piss. Yank.
The autopsy
for fun.
Yeah. The autopsy results showed that he was not that intoxicated, 0.12%, which is, like, more than to drive, but certainly not you can walk and talk.
But, like...
We'll get there. You're thinking, why does his alcohol BAC matter? Because I don't think he went in the river. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can tell, like, if he died that night, that would be relevant.
It doesn't, like, move still?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So...
But he obviously wasn't placed there that night. Like,
okay. So, technically, there was also GHB found in his system, which is the date rape drug. However, medical professionals have said that it was a normal amount for decomposition. Like, the human body does naturally produce GHB.
Okay.
And as it decomposes, like, that would have, they were comfortable with the amount. Many people who have talked about this case do not like that assessment.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, like, you would think that as you're testing, it would screen that, like, anything past the normal amount would be the only thing that pops up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can decide whether you think that's important or not. Again, it goes back to when you even think he died. Like, does it matter?
Right.
I don't know. So, there was also no bruising found on Chris's body. This could indicate that there was no foul play, but would also be strange to have no markings or bruising if you're moving in the Mississippi River for 4 months. Chris's parents found this especially strange because they say that he had just played and practiced for lacrosse the day before he went missing, and he would have had bruises from this, which to them indicates that he was held and the bruises healed. So, yeah, they thought, like, if he died the day after all of this lacrosse, like, he would have still had bruises from that.
Right.
So there were also some insects found in his skin, but they aren't insects that would have been found in water or in extreme cold. Like, that is not, like, their environment.
In his skin?
Yeah, I mean, like, that's pretty normal for, like, I think a river, a water situation. Except they would be water insects.
Right.
As I mentioned, the 31st was the coldest day in October that year. The first freeze of the winter occurred in late January. So, like, part of the theory was, like, could he have gone into the river in October on the 31st, sank or whatever, and was frozen there, which would also cause decomposition. But the first freeze was not until late January.
Right.
Then there were 3 incidents of thawing before the thaw on February 27th.
And we have this woman who says, I run past here every day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time he's been there.
Yeah. Hydrologists and other water-related experts have said that it may be possible that the body was in the river that long. Considering that freezing temperatures can cause decomposition, and, like, at 24 degrees outside would have been, like, 2 degrees in the water. So it would have been very cold. I find it strange that the body moved so drastically in a few hours on February 27th, but it had not moved at all in 4 months.
Right. Like, are we supposed to believe that it, like, was, like, moving back and forth for 4 months?
No, I think,
like, just traveling around the same spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that believe that that he was in there for 4 months believe that, like, he had sank, gotten caught on something, or gotten frozen. And I don't know how that works. I don't know how much bodies sink. I don't know what affects whether a body sinks or floats. I don't know any of that. But, like, in my unmedical, unscientific brain, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So, if the reports are correct that the water would not have been completely frozen, uninterrupted during that whole time, I don't know. Like, I guess it could have sunk and gotten caught for a while. But I just, like, I don't know.
My understanding is, like, bodies don't sink unless they're, like, weighed down by something. And I guess, like, in theory, he could have been weighed down by something that eventually came undone.
Yeah.
And he floated up to the top. But if there's little to moderate signs of decomposition, and being under the water for 4 months, there would 100% be, like, signs of, like, slippage at least, and, like, that thing that happens where your skin turns into, like, soap or something. Like, it I feel like it would be a much, even in the cold temperatures, being under the water, I think there would be much more signs of decomposition.
Yeah. It's also, like, bodies bloat drastically in water.
Like, there would be some kind of sign. Even if the cold, like, kept him from decomposing, there would be something that made it seem like he had been in the water for that long.
Yeah. The flow of the water and the direction that Chris's body moved seem to indicate that he could have come from the direction of Nicollet Island.
Mm-hmm.
This obviously can't really be confirmed, but I mean, it, like, makes sense.
Yeah.
If you have to come from land, that would have been the landmass that he came from.
Was there water in his lungs?
I don't, we're gonna get into people who could be connected, like other victims,
Mm-hmm.
and they do specifically say on some of them, like, there's not water in his lungs, but there isn't anything specific on this. My guess is no. Like, my guess is that, like, they would have said, like, look, he obviously fucking drowned, if that's the case. But yeah, I mean, there's, like, none of the signs lead to... I also think, like, along with the whole, like, you wouldn't be tucked in and stuff if you fell, you also would not... You would not be laying like this. Like, you didn't just fall in accidentally and, like...
And then you're like, okay,
I guess just take me. Like, there would be a struggle. You're trying to survive. You're trying not to drown. So, like, I don't know.
I also, like, I think that because there's, like, no, like, I'm guessing no signs of injury or anything.
Right.
If they originally thought this was a suicide or an accident. So the theory is he must have drowned because there's no sign of this and there's no water in his lungs, and his family has all said he is a fantastic swimmer. I think that, like, we have to also consider that he was either dead when he got into the water, or he was put into the water unconscious.
Unable to,
and died.
Yeah. So that is my information. Now, we're going to get into theories, but before I offer them all to you, what are you thinking? Where's your head at?
I think that Mike Casey gave him GHB.
Okay.
And dragged him to his car in the parking garage.
Okay.
And killed him, drugged him, poisoned him, something. And then waited for 4 months. And then put him in the lake.
Okay.
Mississippi River. And said bye-bye.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that the dogs hitting on the car is the thing is suspicious. And I think that Mike Casey specifically is suspicious. I think that it's definitely a possibility, especially with that guy saying that he thinks he was drugged at that bar.
Yep.
I think that there's definitely a strong possibility that he was drugged for whatever reason and taken into the situation where he was then killed and put in the lake or something, a river. I also think that cave thing is an interesting possibility, that, like, either someone took him there or he went there, but that he ended up in this devil cave and something happened to him there and he eventually floated down river or whatever. I don't think he drowned. I don't think it was an accident. I don't think that he did it to himself. But yeah, I think that whatever did happen to him is clearly something that's, like, difficult to trace.
Yeah, and I think the hard part for me is that, like, it feels a little tinfoil hat-ish to be like, he was held somewhere for 4 months. But on the flip side, if he was killed that night, even if he wasn't placed in the river, he would have been just as decomposed. Like, he still would show 4 months of decomposition unless you put him in a freezer. So, like, I don't know.
Like, yeah.
Like, it's hard for me to think someone's holding this 21-year-old guy somewhere for what? But it's like, I don't know.
I at one point started to wonder, like, if he did go to, like, a party in this cave, okay? Let's say he, like, passes out there and everybody leaves and he's like kind of abandoned there.
Yeah.
At one point I was thinking like maybe he died in the cave and then eventually slipped into the river and that's how he got downstream. But yeah, like how is he not more decomposed? And in that situation, if they party in this cave, how has nobody noticed him before? But like, so yeah, everything that I think that I'm like, okay, maybe this accident did happen is like, but then he would have had to have died like that night to not return to his life for 4 months and then be found dead eventually anyway. Like, and that just seems so much more unlikely. But then I don't know, like then I also wonder like how did somebody keep him like in the same Halloween costume in great condition apparently for 4 months?
Yeah.
With I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, we're going to explore the theories, which includes one theory that could connect this to other murders, which is always fun. We could solve them all.
Woo-woo.
So,
Woo-woo.
We're going to do our due diligence. We will start with the suicide theory. Personally, ruling this one out because I think it's impossible that he fell from the bridge, given that he was uninjured, clothes undisturbed, and the cameras do not show him on that bridge. I guess he could have completed suicide by going down to the bank of the river, but I find that incredibly unlikely. I do not think he would have...
He would have had to be in there, like, trying to not breathe.
Yeah. I do not think he pulled his own hair out, laid in the water, arms crossed, and just allowed himself to drown. Yeah. Accidental death theory. If someone accidentally fell into the river with it that cold, they would die / drown within seconds. That is important to know. However, like maybe even despite the fact that he's supposedly an avid swimmer. However, I think that his body would show signs of that struggle, trying to survive, attempting to get out of the water in the lungs. Same thought. He would not have grabbed his hair and crossed his arms as he was slipping and drowning.
Yeah.
The next theory is the homicide theory. And we have a few options here. So, we have the Jeremy Alford theory. I think that this is possible, that someone involved in the Dealers of Death could be involved. They are said to have been there that night, or at least frequently. They clearly have a history of violence. The bouncer from the Lone Tree Bar did seem a little uneasy to talk about them. Which means he could have seen them follow Chris out or something and, like, doesn't want to say that. Another interesting fact that will come up when we discuss whether Chris could have been a victim of the smiley face killers is that the Dealers of Death was led by someone who went by the nickname of Smiley with a Z. Weird.
Yeah.
In Breaking Homicide, Derek Levasseur sends Alford a letter pretending to be a female reporter asking if he knows anything about the Jenkins case, to which Alford replies, quote, "I don't want to speak on something that I wasn't convicted of," end quote.
Oh.
It's not great. I think that this... What?
You're already in prison. Why are you being sneaky?
Yeah. I think that this...
Don't be cryptic.
Yeah, stupid. You're already convicted of, a brutal homicide, so...
Yeah. Don't be cryptic. Just say it. Just say it with your chest.
I think that this could be a good suspect. The main thing that I get hung up on, and this could be different from when he was 19 to when he was 22, but Alford is incredibly violent. Chris was found with no wounds or signs of trauma. Yeah. So, like, the idea, and again, he was younger then, so I guess he could have escalated, or it could have been someone else in the Dealers of Death group that isn't as violent, but, like, I just feel like there would be no restraint there.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something that I think is, like, very morbid, but, like, it seems that whoever did whatever happened to Chris would have had to be very patient in the sense that, like, I don't think this all happened in this one night, And it also seems that whoever did this had like a very strategic plan
Mm-hmm.
for how to make this seem accidental or purposeful on Chris's part, and like also in the sense that there were no clear injuries to him. Like it seems like it had to have been like, I don't know, like a drug, he was drugged and then put into the river or something. That like it doesn't seem like someone who stabbed someone 20 times with a barbecue fork is capable of like facilitating.
Yeah, which I mean, again, could be different because like he was killing his landlord, so like there was like a personal vendetta, so maybe that isn't his normal MO. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's still possible, but it's not, whatever, my favorite. Next up, the Mike Casey theory. Seems to me that there's a better connection or motive here. Casey seems interested, or at the very least connected, to Chris's girlfriend. So Minneapolis police actually never questioned Mike Casey, and their reasoning was that, quote, he's a married man with children, and we don't want to break up a family, end quote.
What?
I believe this is probably more in relation to the, like, exposing something between him and Ashley. Like, I don't know if they would straight up be like, we don't want to know if he murdered someone. I think they're more like, we don't really want to look into it because he was probably hooking up with that girl. But obviously very, very weird.
Yeah. How old was he?
I don't know. I mean, I would assume...
He's married with children and he's friends with a 21-year-old girl.
Yeah. I also think that the parking garage thing could fit here.
Yeah.
He was working security. They say that a bouncer in the area was confirmed to be in that spot. Why won't they confirm which bouncer? Of course, like, in cases, they keep things close to the chest. But this was in 2002, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sussy that you still won't tell me. Also, he did drive Ashley home that night after Chris either left or was kicked out, which I think is...
What is the possibility that the dogs tracked Chris into that vehicle off of Ashley? Like, that she had all of his stuff in her hands and, you know?
Maybe. I mean, I think... I don't know. I don't know the likelihood of that with dogs. But I think that's smart to consider. I would...
Thank you.
I would assume there were not red feathers falling off of Ashley's sexy police officer costume. But...
Just red flags.
Yeah, of course. There is a theory floating around that Chris found out that night about an affair or an inappropriate relationship between Casey and Ashley. This could explain why he stormed...
Obviously.
Yeah. This could explain why he stormed out, but it could also explain why Mike may have followed him and killed him.
Yeah.
He has a wife and kids. Yeah. Also, how confused and mad are we that Ashley didn't follow him? Like, I don't know that I'm ready to say she was, like, involved, but I'm like, the negligence here.
Like, yeah, she, like, I think if she was having an affair with Mike Casey, I think that kind of shows that her concern lied more with him than with Chris, if that's what happened.
Yeah. One theory that I heard is going to require a little bit of imagination, but I don't think it's crazy, is that it could have been Casey and Alfred together.
Oh.
We do not know that they know each other. However, they did both frequent this bar.
Right.
You are a cop and he is a criminal. And Casey, for all we know, like, may not have even left the bar that night. He may have stayed with Ashley the whole time. And if he did kill Chris that night, he would have had to leave, go get Chris, put him somewhere, and then take Ashley home. I'm hoping to God Chris's body is not, like, in the back of the fucking car when he takes Ashley home. But, so then the question is, like, could Casey have seen Alfred there and been like, just go take that dude out? Like,
yeah.
Like a hitman. Other miscellaneous options are that Chris broke up a fight. Could it have been one of those guys? Could it have been the bouncers, if that's true, that a few months later they're trying to shove some guy into a car? I think that's very possible.
Yeah.
A theory that I appreciate but could really work with any suspect is that this occurred on Nicollet Island. Could someone have offered Chris a ride to another party? It's Halloween. He's walking down the street, got nothing to do, and he's got to go find something to do while his friends are still in there. Maybe even just to kill time, and then he'll head back down toward downtown to get them. And, you know, Halloween night, a creepy cave party would be super cool. So, this could explain why he wasn't seen walking on camera. Could have gotten into a car. It could also explain his scent going to the parking garage, at least to the general area. Like someone, whoever this person was, could have been parked down there. It could certainly match with where he would have gone into the water from. In addition, I have a thought that, like, I don't know scientifically if it makes sense, but I wondered, like, would it even be possible for his body to have remained in an underground tunnel during that time? It would have still been very cold. Perhaps. Yeah. I thought that too, like, if it's frequented though, like, people would have seen him. But, like, maybe some of the tunnels aren't used as, like, party spots. And so if someone killed him on Nicollet Island and put him in a tunnel, he maybe wouldn't have washed into the river until then. It could have still been cold enough. It may have even been a little wet down there, but, like, still could have been cold enough to pause decomposition. And then he wouldn't have moved out into the river for a few months.
Yeah.
Of course.
I don't know. I just can't get over the red feather thing.
Yeah. I know. And it's like, sure, other people could have been wearing, it's Halloween. There could have been a million costumes. Yeah. Boas could have been, like, anything that have red feathers, I guess. But, like, his scent right next to the red feather, weird.
Yeah. And, like, I will say, craft feathers are notoriously not strong. Like, you see the end of a Harry Styles concert, there are feathers freaking everywhere from the boas. So, like, it's possible that maybe it got stuck to Ashley or Mike at some point while interacting with him and got brought into the vehicle, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's nuts.
Yeah. Of course, even if he wasn't killed on Nicollet Island, it is still possible, if not probable, that this is where his body was placed into the water. So, we're going to end on the smiley face killer theory. So, put your tinfoil hats on, because this one feels really good for this.
Okay.
What?
I was there a smiley face nearby?
I don't know, but, like, nearby. So the smiley face part is where you lose me on the smiley face killer theory, because killers is the presumed that it's multiple. But there are smiley faces found, like, near, like, 90% of these bodies. So not all of them, but also, like, near is, like, different in everyone. Like, it's, like, a couple miles or, like, right next to it. And also smiley faces are the most common, like, form of graffiti. So it's like, how long has that smiley face been there? I'm just thinking of the smiley face killers as a just name to fill the space. You're not going to hear me talk much about the smiley faces.
Okay.
So since 1997, young, promising college men, usually honor students and or athletes in the Northeast and Midwest, have been ending up dead in or near bodies of water. Most, if not all, of these young men were out for nights with friends, got separated from the group somehow, and went missing. I will start with the suspected first victim. I'll just go through a few that I think sound related. So Patrick McNeil, in 1997, he was a student at Fordham University in New York City. Patrick was with his friends at the Dapper Dog Bar when he started throwing up and became incredibly disoriented. He decided to head back to campus. Witnesses that night say that he was stumbling and unsteady. One witness said, which these people gotta intervene. But one witness said that they saw a van following behind him. At one point, Patrick falls on the ground. The van completely stops. And when he stands back up and continues walking, the van continues as well.
Okay.
Weird.
Help him.
Yeah. 2 months later, Patrick's body was found in the East River. He was found on his back, but there was no lividity on his back. His BAC was 0.12%, which is not drunk enough to explain his behavior that night.
Right.
There were marks around his neck, which could indicate binding.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of his body being bloated by the water, as you would expect, his body was actually contracted.
I was gonna say, I wonder if with Chris, if there was some possibility of like that he was held for 4 months, but like so like starved, neglected, malnourished to the point where he just simply died. Yeah. And like that's why there's no sign of injury or anything, and then is placed in the water.
Yeah. And that could be like, right, we don't think of 20-something strong men being kidnapped and like tortured quite as often as like young girls, but it could just simply be like a strategy to not get caught. Like the further from the day they went missing, there's less DNA, there's less whatever. So it could just be like, you sit here until you die. And then once you die, we'll dispose of you. They may not even interact with them anymore. Yeah.
How much easier does it become to believe that he fell into the water or jumped into the water when there is no gunshot wound, no stab wound, no marks, no strangulation, and that could also explain him pulling his hair out.
Right. Yeah.
Like he's going crazy for 4 fucking months.
Yeah, and I think like there are some where you see like indications of binding or whatever, but that could even just be like for keeping purposes. Like maybe they're irritable and you gotta, I don't know.
If it is more than one person, their strategies for keeping them could be different.
Right. And I think the theory with the smiley face killers is that they're all connected through like the dark web. But like doing this pretty much separately. So then it would be like, sure, there's like instructions, but it's like you would all do it a little bit different.
Right.
So next I'll tell you about Brian Welzine, who went missing in Chicago on New Year's Eve night, heading into the new millennia. Happy 2000.
Y2K, baby.
Woo! He was out with 4 friends when he became violently ill. His mom said that he hardly ever drank alcohol as he was incredibly health conscious. He went missing that night and his body was found on the opposite side of Lake Michigan on the shore in Gary, Indiana, 77 days later. Experts say that his body looked as though he had been dead for about a week. In order to fall into Lake Michigan in the place that police suspect that he did, Brian would have had to cross 10 lanes of traffic or navigate an underground pedestrian pathway while intoxicated, violently ill, and unfamiliar with Chicago. It's not like these are not his stomping grounds. The Coast Guard ran some testing which showed that the body could have made it to the shore of Gary, Indiana. Because at first they were like, it couldn't have made it that far. Like, that doesn't make any sense. He did show that it could have done so. But that it would have done so in 36 hours. So it is a little unclear how he was found there 77 days later as if like no one goes to this shore. Ever.
Yeah.
There was no lividity on his back, although he was found lying on his back. And there was no fluid in his lungs. This next one and the last one, which I think is the most likely to be connected to the smiley face killers for me, or at least to this, whatever you want to call them. Todd Geib went missing on June 11th, 2005 from an orchard party in rural Michigan. He left the party around midnight to head home, but the lake he was later found in was in the opposite walking direction of his home, and his home was only a mile away. So he was probably walking there but the lake was in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
He was found 21 days later in a private, secluded lake on the same property of the orchard. In the middle of summer, after 3 weeks in the lake, Todd only showed signs of intermediate decomposition. He was found in an interesting position.
Mm-hmm.
His head was above the water, rested on his forearm, and his body was floating vertically, like straight up and down. Like he's standing. Yeah, that is weird. The owner of the lake reports that his brother had fished the entire lake the night before the body was found. Saw nothing. He also said that the morning that they found Tom's body, they had noticed their canoe was not where it was tied up the night before. So they took they took one of their other boats to the other side of their lake, and they found the canoe had been moved over there and was full of empty beer cans. Clearly that no one in their family took accountability for. So Todd's toxicology report showed that he had high doses of 2 separate antidepressants in his system, neither of which did he have a prescription for. A pharmacist did confirm that these 2 drugs would not be prescribed together, but that the amount found in his system could definitely cause confusion or hallucinations.
Okay.
There's like a smiley face killer series where they do a few of these, and I watched that, and they did a test with pig carcasses, and they even put like similar clothes on, and they put the carcass in for 21 days, and it essentially disintegrated.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. It, like, bloated huge, and then, was just kind of, like, evaporated. So.
Yeah. There's no way.
Yeah. Not in the summer. Like, sure, you can get into the science of, like, what it would be in the north in the winter, but, like, not midsummer, dude.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Here's what I'll offer about the smiley faces. Is that on Todd's gravestone, his family did find a smiley face sticker stuck next to his name. Which I just think is fucking rude.
Yeah. That's assholery.
Yeah. Rude. So that's what I've got. I have one lingering question. So in the smiley face killer theory, or other theories about these boys being murdered, it is thought that they're being held captive before being killed, which is what we've discussed. But I guess I feel like you cannot both pinpoint the BAC levels as proof that they weren't that drunk, but also claim that they were held alive, because then, like, how would the BAC be relevant? And also, why would they have any alcohol in their systems? Like, they're being...
Well, that's assuming that the police believe they were held captive.
No, but even the guys who believe...
When pointing out these BACs.
No, the guys who believe in the smiley face killer theories, they point out the BACs to say, like, he wasn't drunk enough to have fallen in. He wasn't drunk enough to have... You know, like, they were violently ill and they weren't really that drunk. So it's supposed to show that they were drugged, or that, like, this wasn't their own doing. And I believe that. Like, I believe that, like, no one said Chris was that drunk. Like, he did not pee on himself. Like, there would be no reason to believe that he was so drunk that he would have just walked off a bridge. But I just think, like, if you're going to insinuate that, like, that BAC matters and shows us something, but then you also think he was held for 4 months, like, who is giving him... How did he even get a 0.12% BAC if he's being held? Are we assuming... And, like, your theory could be, like... Maybe they're not getting any food, but they're getting alcohol?
Yeah.
Like...
Well, that's what I was going to say, is, like, I think that it can be used to, like, disprove these, like, accident theories. Like, no, he wasn't... Even if he did die that night, this is his BAC, so there's no way. But if they are being held and in some way sedated, maybe they are being plied with alcohol in a way that keeps them sedentary, and then once it's worn off and they're dead, then they're put in the rivers. I I'm going to combine some theories of
Go
what I
for it.
think may have happened.
Okay.
What if Smiley Face Killers is like a real network, but it's not through the dark web and it's bouncers?
Or police.
Yeah, or like security people
Law
in general.
enforcement.
And like I think that explains a lot of how several of these men are seemingly drugged at the bars. It explains a lot about them being followed directly from the bars. That one guy being shoved into a car by bouncers after he thinks he's being drugged. I think that explains so much of it.
I also think
and them all going missing from parties or bars.
Yeah. I also think it offers you a connection that like otherwise you have to assume these people on these networks are showing up either like pretending to be patrons at these parties and just hoping they find someone, or they're hiding in the woods like waiting for someone to walk out. Like, so I do think it is possible that like these that it's people like that is the only like consistent connection, right? Like the only group of people that would be at all of these scenes, except like the orchard party, probably didn't have security. But yeah, I do.
Yeah. And then I also wonder if maybe, and I know that like witnesses say that Chris did spill the beer on his lap, but maybe he like threw up on his lap.
Maybe, I mean,
or something. And like, and he just, that's like another thing that's like maybe he was like not so drunk, but something was put in his drink.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, you have to get out so that one of them can follow him.
Yeah, or if Mike Casey's involved, could he have just poured the beer on his lap? Could he have just been like, I want him out?
And then said he pissed himself, get him out.
I want him out of here. Maybe it could be either, right? It could just be like for personal gain, unrelated to the Smiley Face Killers, I like your girl. Or he could be in this culture of...
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I do find Nicollet Island to be very important in my mind.
Yeah. So he was like seen there?
No, it's just that with the flows of the water and like whatever, it would make sense.
They think he could have been there.
It would make sense that would be where his body, the area that his body came from, which could mean a lot, but you think like you have to be put in at a landmass somehow.
Yeah.
And it that could mean nothing, right? Like it's also like that goes back to like how long was he in there? When we're talking about the flow and the direction, are we thinking 4 months? Are we thinking 1 day? Are we does the flow matter if we think he was stuck in the bottom for 4 months? Like probably not at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I do think like it would also be kind of a genius place. Like people, the Mississippi River in Minneapolis, it's right in the center of everything. Even if you go down to the banks of it, it's probably a little bit visible.
Yeah.
You know? So, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I do think that, I don't know, I think that the Smiley Face Killers are bouncers.
Yeah, and I think that, like, unfortunately, we see this a lot. But if Mike Casey is not involved, the police should have done a better job at convincing me of that. They should have ruled him out. But because they refused to do that, I'm pretty stuck.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like we talked, like, last week, we saw someone get convicted of a murder purely based on circumstantial evidence. This week, we're seeing somebody who has what I would consider physical evidence, blood, pieces of a dead person's Halloween costume in their car.
Next to their car.
And the scent of that person close to their car, in theory.
Yeah, and again, that's assuming...
the police will not look into it.
That's assuming that it's his car.
Yeah, it was parked there.
But, like, what other bouncer are y'all covering for? Like, I just don't.
Right. Well, and if and look into all of them.
Yeah.
Like, I think like
You know how you could prove your
I
man
hear this.
innocent? You could say,
Yeah.
look, the dog hit on a car that wasn't his.
Yeah. You're saying that you don't want to like break apart his family, but you're putting his wife in a position where she is now going to forever question him.
Yeah. She's
And
gonna.
like, sure, she's his husband, she believes in him, but like there's always going to be something in the back of her mind that's like he wasn't fully ruled out though.
And she is gonna know he took that girl home.
Right.
Whatever she makes
She's
of that.
She's already mad at him.
Yeah, she doesn't need the police to like confirm. But police aren't gonna confirm whether it was an affair or not. Like, she doesn't need that.
Right.
She's like, why in the fuck did you take a 21, 22-year-old home that night? And why? Right. She probably knows whether that was his stall that he was parked in.
Yeah.
When the police came and said, can we sniff your car? Or the whoever.
I think I hear true crime podcasts say this a lot. Like, who is it hurting for you to just rule someone out? Mm-hmm. Either you solve this case or that person is fully exonerated. So, like, why can't you? And like, I think the police will argue that like it's like there's resources and money that goes into it. Like, yeah, but at the end of the day, if you could solve a murder,
yeah,
I think that's what the resources and money are for.
Yeah, and like you guys chose to reopen this. You did. Like, so
dive in.
And
give
like,
it your all.
Yeah, even you chose to reopen it because of this guy's confession, you didn't look any further into him either.
Yeah.
Like, not extensively, at least. Like,
yeah.
I don't understand. You couldn't have done what they fucking did on the Investigation Discovery show. You could have pretended to be someone and see if you could get a confession out of him. Like, come on now.
Right.
But, I don't know. I'm not mad about the theory that, like, Alfred in this group called the Dealers of Death, like, they could have been, like, hitmen, even for these bouncers. The bouncers shoved them in the car, let them take them somewhere. Like, Smiley.
They are that's the original name of Smiley Face Killers.
Yeah. We sent them off to Smiley.
Suspicious.
Yeah, what if the Smiley Face Killers well, I mean, I was going to say what if they originated in Minneapolis? That'd be crazy. But I mean, the first one was in New York City, but I guess it's not like they can't travel.
Yeah, they travel.
Whatever.
They live a life of luxury.
Yeah. Yeah, my hard thing is, like, other than Mike Casey, I don't see a motive.
Yeah,
but it doesn't, agree. But I don't know that, like, if you're in the Smiley Face Killers that, like, you need one.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was going to say is, like, this idea of, like, promising young college men with, like, athletes or, like, with honors or whatever, like, what is the, like, what do you gain from them dying?
Yeah, I mean, unless it's just, like, we know, so, like, most of these have been ruled suicides or accidents, like, and are not looked into, so it could just be, like, people that want to kill, like, people that want to be serial killers, but they think, like, this is a group that won't get caught because they're drunk and people will think they just did whatever. Or is this somehow, like, a thing about, like, proving that this is what these men do and, like, trying to show them in this light that they just, like, are so drunk and reckless and I don't know. But very sad. I think any of the Smiley Face Killer possible victims, but certainly victims nonetheless, would make interesting stories for us to tell. Todd Geib especially has, like, probably, like, the most stuff to tell.
He's on your list.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably not the last you'll hear of the Smiley Face Killers theories. Alrighty. That's all I got. Mary's back up next week.
Yeah. Ooh. Do you want to know what I'm going to do?
You can give us a snippy.
It's a little bit of everything. We've got a survival story. We've got a murder.
Ooh.
We've got the system doing the wrong thing.
Yes.
Again.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
We've got someone who 100% would have been a serial killer. But it's not Spencer. Don't worry.
Oh. The system did do something wrong there too.
Yeah.
Different system.
Yeah.
All right. Well, see ya next time. Bye.
Bye.